Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we got a couple of dev blogs to get through, and the title is correct. Some hybrid ships are getting quite the buff, along with a lot of changes to ships that have been out for some time now. A lot of the changes, I've skimmed through these dev blogs so far. For the ships that have already been released, a lot of these changes have been, well, needed for quite some time. I'm glad they're finally getting done. We also know what the Illinois and the Gato are going for, along with some changes to the Pan-Asian and Pan-Euro DDs as well. So if you'd like to read along as I read aloud, you can find the links to these dev blogs in the description down below. If there's any relevant images or artwork, I will throw them up on screen as we go through them. Also, guys, if you find yourself enjoying this video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment. It helps out on the YouTube side of things, and if you really enjoy it, make sure to subscribe as well. Make sure that notification bell's turned on. Apparently, YouTube's been doing that thing where it goes through and turns off all notifications for some reason. I don't know. It's YouTube. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on into it. So we're going to start out from the most recent one and work our way back. So, balance changes public test 12.2. We're applying balance changes to the following ships based on the analysis of both their combat statistics as well as player feedback. Hybrid ships Agano, Cherbourg, Finyang, Mastrael, Averi, Adriatico, Cavour, Nino Bixio, Kodvoisky, Incomparable, Avaro di Bazan, and Trump. So first off, the hybrid ships, the Kearsarge B, the Tone, and the Issei will receive depth charge airstrike with standard stats for the relevant ship type in tier. They also get access to airstrike modification 1 upgrade. So this is something that really should have been done a long time ago, because the Kearsarge, the Tone, and the Issei had literally nothing to fight against submarines with. Like, people say that submarines are uncounterable and you can't do anything to them. Well, you can. You have the depth charge aircraft, and if you practice with it and use a couple of techniques that I outlined in my how to sink submarines video, they are quite useful when dealing with submarines. And if you've got like 3 ships together, you could absolutely nuke the crap out of a submarine and just ruin the guy's game before he has a chance to do anything. But like, these ships literally could not do anything to subs once they were submerged. Submarines are vulnerable from surface to periscope depth, but once they get beneath periscope depth, you can literally not touch them with your main battery guns or the aircraft that these ships have. So this gives them the ability to counter submarines now when they are submerged. I'm surprised it took this long to get these ships ASW. I mean, like, really, like, why? CV's got them, what, two or three? No, much further than that, like 3 or 4 patches ago? Like, if CVs can have them, why can't these guys? But, you know, it's finally coming out. It's a good thing. They did say that once they were putting the American hybrid battleship line into test, and if the ASW worked out well there, they were going to give it to these ships, and they have. So glad to see that these ships are finally getting the ability to fight back against the submarine menace. Alright, so the other changes, so the Agano, this is the Tier 5 Japanese cruiser. Fixed incorrect torpedo damage reduced from 20,000 to 17,000, that's quite a big nerf. But at the same time, the main battery, there goes a crotch rocket. The main battery reload time was reduced from 9 to 8.5 seconds as compensation for that. The Cherbourg, the quite fearsome Tier 8 French battle cruiser. Main battery reload time increased from 28 to 29 seconds. Cherbourg is quite the fearsome ship, as is most of the French battlecruiser line. So she's getting a little bit of a nerf there. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. The ship's still going to do very well in my mind. But hey, you know, when you lose a second of reload, you lose a second of reload. The Finyang and the Ship Smasher. Main battery reload time reduced from 4.7 to 4.4 seconds. A little bit of a buff there. The Mastrel, which is the Tier 5 Italian destroyers, and this is another thing they went through. They went through and they changed a bunch of the Tier 5 Italian DDs. So the sap shell maximum damage was reduced from 2,800 to 2,600. That's reasonable as, good God, if you play like a low tier Italian DD, you literally just murder the ever-living crap out of other DDs. They are amazing at that with that sap alpha. Like, it's not even a contest. I played the Tier 5 when the Italians were in early access, and I could easily take out Tier 6 and even some Tier 7 DDs with how good the sap shells are on that thing. It's crazy. So the Averi, instead of decreasing the alpha damage, they increased the reload time from 6.8 to 7.1 seconds. The Adriatico actually got a buff. So she got a buff from 5.7 to 5.4 seconds reload time on her main guns. And that's another thing with the Italian DD line. Like, from the low to mid tier, they absolutely dominate in DD on DD engagement in most cases. But once you start getting up to the higher tier ships, the other DDs, they've managed to pick up with their DPM enough to where they can't outgun you. And that's what makes the tier 10 so difficult for me to play, is that it just doesn't really have the DPM. You gotta be really careful when you engage. You can't kind of just go for it like you can with the mid and lower tier DDs. So good to see that they're apparently noticing that here with the Adriatico, and maybe the tier 10 might get some love too. Speaking of Italian ships and getting some love, the Conte di Cavour Tier 5 Italian battleships getting a pretty big reload buff from 30 to 28.5 seconds. That's another thing with the Italian battleships. They're so terrible at mid-tier. It's literally the most painful line to grind through in my mind in today's World of Warships, because their gun accuracy is terrible. Because of the SAP Alpha, you have to give them such long reload times and such terrible accuracy, because if they could actually hit what they're aiming at with any type of consistency, they would just be taking a dump over everything with how crazy the SAP is. So, nice to see we're getting some relief there with the Conte di Cavour. Granted, a lot of them did already get a reload buff or a slight dispersion buff. I guess the Cavour just was the holdout for them. Speaking of Italian, still, the Nino Bixio, the Tier 2 Italian cruiser, the SAP Alpha was reduced from 2800 to 2600, and the main battery reload time was outright buffed from 12 to 11 seconds. The Kotvoisky, the Soviet Tier 5 cruiser, she got a buff on a reload from 9.5 to 9 seconds, and one of my favorite crazy ships, the Incomparable, as I like to call it, the Incomprehensible, the Tier 10 British battle cruiser. That's the giant Tier 10 battleship with the 6 20-inch guns. The thing looks so goofy. I love it. And it plays so goofy, too. She's getting a pretty big buff, too. A reload buff from 29 to 28 seconds from those 20-inch guns. That's nice. The Incomparable is very fun to play when you can get close. But even then, like, her main gun dispersion is so trolly at times, y'all. If you don't have it, you know, it might seem like just a crazy ship, but man, let me tell you, the amount of times that half of my 6 shells absolutely just went nowhere near where I aimed at, it's painful. So that's a welcome buff there. Speaking of Tier 10 ships, the Alvaro di Bazan, her burst fire reload time has been toned down from 28 to 24 seconds. Man, the Bazan is just a ship that it's really, really tricky to play. You do have to play it more like a cruiser, but it doesn't really work that well, so any help this ship can have is pretty welcomed. And the Trump. So the Trump's getting, honestly, some pretty nice buffs here too, to its torpedoes of all things. So the torpedo speed's being increased from 64 to 71 knots, the maximum damage is being increased from 13,700 to 15,000, and then the flood chance is being increased from 227% to 249%. So that's some huge buffs to this thing's torpedoes. Granted, Trump isn't exactly a torpedo boat, but I mean, I've managed to do some pretty decent things with the ship's torpedoes before this buff. I mean, it's you do rely on the airstrikes. Trump is the Dutch DD with the airstrikes quite a bit, and the guns, if you get into a nice position, they're pretty nice, and I've managed to usually like find a ship that's stuck somewhere, drop some airstrikes on his head, start farming him out, throw my rack of torpedoes at him, and usually snag a torpedo hit or two. So this is definitely going to help out the Trump. I don't really think the Trump really needed it. She was doing fine as is. I'm not a DD main. I was having no problem getting pretty good performance out of this DD, so that's pretty surprising to me. So that's the earliest dev blog. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Illinois and the Gato. How are we getting these ships? Well, the Illinois is coming out for research points. That is not surprising to me. All these weird as hell ships go straight to the armory, into the research bureau. That makes sense. Illinois is looking like it's going to be a pretty goofy boat. That's the Iowa with the Des Moines guns. They recently nerfed her a fair bit, though. They nerfed her survivability quite a bit because the Iowa, when you play it right, it's actually a really survivable ship. You know, you got a lot of speed and maneuverability to work with, along with, of course, now the Des Moines guns and the Des Moines AP. So, yeah. That's, I mean, that's a lot. You got to regrind lines. If you time it right with the boost to the Research Bureau points, you can do it, and I think it's a tier 9, so it probably would be about 5 lines you'll have to regrind. If you're wondering, the Harugumo line is the best line to reset because it's the shortest line in terms of XP. Now, the Gato, the tier 10 American submarine, is coming out for steel. That's bold. I don't think there's enough players that... I mean, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. Enough players that play competitive enough or invest in this game enough that are going to be willing to spend that much steel on a submarine. Steel ships are expensive. Still takes a very long time to get. So that's just... I'm not sure about that. But I mean, hey, it's Wargaming's move. It's a free ship at the end of the day because steel is free to get. Just takes a lot of time. So... yeah, but that's surprising. I thought Gato, maybe coal, maybe doubloons, maybe outright cash, but I didn't really see steel. That's surprising to me. Alright, and then finally, the Pan American cruisers and European destroyers. Some changes are coming to them. So the Pan American cruisers across the board, and most of the changes we're getting are getting nerfs, which is really weird because I played the Cordoba, which is the tier 4. Granted, it's tier 4, you know, not usually the highlight of the line. And it was pretty rough. So let's see what they are doing here in detail. So it starts with the La Argentina, which is the tier 5. Her main battery reload time is being increased from 9.5 to 10 seconds. The AP shell damage is being reduced from 3,100 to 3,000. And then the range is being nerfed from 14.5 to 14.2. And that's with the upgraded gunfire control system. So, yeah, that's, yeah. Wow. Granted, that does mean that the ship is overperforming in testing, so that also might indicate that the line gets better from the tier 4, but okay. And the Coronel Balanasi, she's actually getting a bit of a buff from 7 to 6.5 seconds on her reload. That's a tier 7 ship. And then the tier 8, the Ignacio Allende, is getting a nerf from 6 to 7 seconds on her reload. So you got 2 buffs and 1 slight nerf here. I would imagine that by the time you get to tier 8, like I said in my Cordoba video, that's when you're getting into like the proto booster designs. By that point, the DPM and the amount of guns should make up for the AP only nature of the line. But yeah, okay. Again, apparently they are overperforming from what we're seeing here in testing, which I guess is a good sign. That means it gets better from the tier 4. So there's that. Alright, and then for the European DDs. So the Lambros Castones, which is the tier 9, her smoke screen dispersion time is being reduced from 97 to 93 seconds, so a nerf to her smoke there. But on the other hand, Gdansk, which is the tier 10 European DD, is getting her dispersion time increased on her smoke from 93 to 97 seconds. So the tier 10 got a buff to its smoke. Now keep in mind, these are DDs with smoke and radar and good guns with good velocity and good shell characteristics and such. So, yeah. A DD that can smoke up, pop radar, and then DACA you down. Okay. Again, I'm surprised that we're this far into testing and they still have that radar. That is, wow. Again, with their gun parameters too, which are very good. So, we're getting closer and closer to these guys coming out, and they're still holding on to that. Like the Soviet battleships, they lost their radar, I think, like 1 or 2 DevBlogs in. So, yeah, I guess they're going to hold on to this all the way through, which is going to be a bit of a headache for other DD players. Because there's already so much radar in the game, now we're getting a whole line of radar boats. So that's, yeah. There's some other bug changes to European DDs. Basically, they fixed some issues with their depth charges and such. So there's that. And then the Colossus, there was a bug with the rockets attacking, with the rocket planes attacking at the incorrect angle. That's also been fixed as well. Again, that ship's still in testing. So guys, that's what I got for you today. That's this week's DevBlog Roundup. They normally release these all by Wednesday, so I was waiting for the rest of these to come out before I made a video. That way I didn't have to make like 3 videos just on DevBlogs. So that's what we got. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Friday. If you enjoyed today's video, again, please make sure you drop a like and leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 50,000 subs, thanks to you guys. Hope you guys have a great Friday, have a great weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.